Hello students, this lecture of English literature for Shastri part first, paper first. Today we will study William Shakespeare's poem Shall I Compare Thee. First of all, we will know about the poet. William Shakespeare was born on 26th April 1564 and he was died on 23rd April 1616. He was an English playwright, poet, and actor, widely regarded as the greatest writer in the English language and the world's greatest dramatist. He is often called England's national poet and the Bard of Avon, or simply the Bard. His extant works, including collaborations, consist of some 39 plays, 154 sonnets, two long narrative poems, and a few other verses, some of uncertain authorship. His plays have been translated into every major living language and are performed more often than those of any other playwright. They also continue to be studied and reinterpreted. Shakespeare was born and raised in Stratford upon Avon, Warwickshire. At the age of 18, he married Anne Hathaway, with whom he had three children, Susanna and twins Hamnet and Judith. Sometimes between 1585 and 1592, he began a successful career in London as an actor, writer, and part owner of a playing company called the Lord Chamberlain's Men, later known as the King's Men. At age 49, around 1613, he appears to have retired to Stratford, where he died 3 years later. Few records of Shakespeare's private life survive. This has stimulated considerable speculation about such matters as his physical appearance, his sexuality, his religious beliefs, and whether the works attributed to him were written by others. Then we come on about the poem. This sonnet is one of the best known of the 155 sonnets written by the English playwright and poet William Shakespeare. In the sonnet, the speaker asks whether he should compare the young woman to a summer's day, but notes that the young woman has qualities that surpass a summer's day. He also notes the qualities of a summer day are subject to change and will eventually diminish. The speaker then states that the young woman will live forever in the lines of the poem as long as it can be read. There is an irony being expressed in this sonnet. It is not the actual young woman who will be eternalized, eternalized, but the description of him contained in the poem. The poem contains scant or no description of the young woman, but instead contains vivid and lasting description of a summer day which the young woman is supposed to outlive. The woman, the poem is part of the fair youth sequence which comprises sonnet 1 to 126 in the accepted numbering stemming from the first edition in 1609. It is also the first of the cycle after the opening sequence, now described as the procreation sonnets. Some scholars, however, contend that it is part of the procreation sonnets as it addresses the idea of reaching eternal life through the written word, a theme they find in sonnets 15 to 17. In this view, it can be seen as part of a transition to sonnets 20's time theme. Then we come on the poem's text. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling birds of May, and summer's liege hath all too short a date. Shakespeare asks the addressee of the sonnet, who is probably the same young man or fair youth to whom the other early sonnets are also addressed, whether he should compare him to a summer's day. He goes on to remark that the young man is lovelier and more gentle and dependably constant. After all, in May, which in Shakespeare's time was considered a bona fide part summer, rough winds often shake the beloved flowers of the season, thus proving the bird's point that summer is less temperate than the young man. What is more, summer is over all too quickly its lease. A legal term soon runs out. We all know this to be true. When September's roll round, the night starts drawing in and we get the sinking back to school feeling. Then we come on the next four line, or we can say the second quatrain. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. In these lines, or in the lines 5 to 8, Shakespeare continues his analysis of the ways in which the young man is better than a summer's day. Sometimes the sun, which is the eye of heaven, shines too brightly. The weather is just too hot, unbearably so. And conversely, sometimes the sun is dimmed or hidden by clouds, and every lovely or beautiful things. Fair here in every fair is used as a noun, that is every fair thing. Even the summer sometimes drops a little below its best, either randomly or through the march of nature, which changes and in time age every living thing. Then we come on the next quatrain. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death break thou wanders in his shade, when in eternal lines time thou grows. In lines 9 to 12, Shakespeare continues the youth versus summer motif, arguing that the young man's eternal summer or prime will not fade, nor will the youth's eternal summer lose its hold on the beauty the young man's owns, nor will death, the grim reaper, be able to boast that the young man's walk in the shadow of death, not when the youth grows, not towards death, like a growing or lengthening shadow, but towards immortality, thanks to the eternal lines of Shakespeare's verse, which will guarantee that he will live forever. Then we come on the last two lines, which is couplet. In his concluding couplet, Shakespeare states that as long as the human race continues to exist and read poetry, Shakespeare's poem, like this poem, survives and continues to give life to young men through keeping his memory alive. Then we come on what is a sonnet. A sonnet, pronounced sonnet, is a 14 lines poem with a fixed rhyme scheme. Often sonnets use iambic pentameter, 5 sets of unstressed syllables followed by stressed syllables for a 10-syllable line. Sonnets were invented by the Italian poet Giacomo da Lentini during the 1200s. The word sonnet is derived from the old Occitane phrase sonnet meaning little song. Example and types of sonnets. Over time, the sonnet form has evolved. Here are the two most common types of sonnets written today. First, Italian or Petrarchan sonnet. The Italian sonnet is based on original sonnet invented by da Lentini. The Petrarchan sonnet consists of an octave group of 8 lines followed by a sestet group of 6 lines. The typical rhyme scheme is as follows: A B B A B B A for the octave and C D D C D D C D D E C E or C D D C C D for the sestet. The octave introduces a problem or conflict and then the sestet addresses or solves the problem. Here is an example of an Italian sonnet written by William Wordsworth. Milton, thou shouldst be living at this hour. England hath need of thee, she is a pen. Here, our rhyme scheme is A and pen's rhyme scheme is B. Of stagnant waters, altar, sword, and pen. And here the pronunciation pen is like fen. So the rhyme scheme of the third line is B. London 1802 has the rhyme scheme of an Italian sonnet A B B A A B B A and C D D E C E. In the octave, we learn of a problem. Milton has died and England is in moral decline. In the sestet, we learn of the solution. Unlike England, Milton was filled with glory and morality, which England must adopt in order to recover. Then, English sonnet, which is known Shakespearean sonnet. The Shakespearean sonnet is named after Shakespeare not because he invented it, but because he is the most famous writer of this type of sonnet. Typically, the English sonnet explores romantic love, Its rhyme scheme is as follows: A B A B C D C D followed by E F E F G G. Here is an example of an English sonnet by William Shakespeare. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling birds of May, and summer's leech hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed. So here we see that the rhyme scheme of first line is A and the rhyme scheme of the second line is B, and the pronunciation of third lines may, which is like the first line. So again the rhyme scheme of the third line is A, and the rhyme scheme of the fourth line is B, the rhyme scheme of the fifth line is C, and the rhyme scheme of the sixth line is D. And this sonnet is one of the most famous examples of the Shakespearean sonnet, using the exact rhyme scheme and exploring romantic love for a woman. The importance of using sonnets. Sonnets are a classical poetic form which has been adopted across languages and around the world. Although free verse has popularized poetry free of form, rhyme, or syllabic constraints, the sonnet still remains a popular form in its own right. Sonnets have allowed poets to examine religious, personal, and political problems. They allow even the most elementary poets to dabble in romance with the most classic form of love poetry. Major themes: love. The speaker begins by comparing the man's beauty to summer, but soon the man becomes a force of nature himself. In the line, the eternal summer shall not fade, the man suddenly embodies summer. As a perfect being, he is ever powerful than the summer's day, to which he has been compared up to this point. In this way, Shakespeare suggests that love is an even more powerful force than nature. Writing and memory. Like many other sonnets, this sonnet contains a volta or turn where the subject matter changes and the speaker shifts from describing the subject's beauty to describing what will happen after the youth eventually grows old and dies, nor shall death break thou wanders in his set. Shakespeare writes instead. He says that the fair youth will live on through the poem itself, which has captured the young man's beauty. So long as man can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. Literary style. This sonnet is an English or Elizabethan sonnet, meaning it contains 14 lines, including 3 quatrains and a couplet, and is written in iambic pentameter. The poem follows the rhyme scheme ABAB, CDCD, EFEF, GG. Like many sonnets of the era, the poem takes the form of a direct address to an unnamed subject. The volta occurs at the beginning of the third quatrain, where the poet turns his attention to the future, but thy eternal summer shall not fade. The key literary device in the poem is metaphor, which Shakespeare references directly in the opening line. However, instead of using it traditionally, comparing the subject to summer's day, Shakespeare draws attention to all the ways in which the Comparison is inadequate. Historical context. Little is known about the composition of Shakespearean sonnets and how much of the material in them is autobiographical. Scholars have long speculated about the identity of the young man who is the subject of the first 126 sonnets, but they have yet to find any conclusive answers. Thanks.